Next, we have our treasurer's report.
I move that the Saginaw Township Board of Education approve the total checks, transfers, and wires as presented in the amount of $4,513,997.01. This amount covers invoices paid for March 19th, 2020 through April 22, 2020, and the March 2020 payroll, related taxes, ACH transfers for benefits, ACH reimbursement payments, and sales tax. Support.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mike Colucci.
Yes.
Jen Collison.
Yes.
Janine Coughlin.
Yes.
Marianne Bird.
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes?
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
Eric Smith. Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the district credit card invoices. Because the district switched credit card providers halfway through the cycle, we actually have two different groups of credit card invoices to be approved. The first is the invoices in the amount of $11,000 and change from BMO. Is there a motion to approve those invoices?
I can read that.
Go ahead, Eric.
I move to approve those invoices.
Support.
Any discussion?
For the credit card. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead and finish, Eric. It's fine.
No, I move to approve the invoices for the first credit card charges for this month.
Totaling $11,010.75.
Totaling $11,010.75.
Your
Support.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes.
Janine Coughlin.
Yes.
Marianne Bird.
Yes.
Jan Collison.
Yes.
Mike Colucci.
Yes.
Eric Smith. Yes.
You need to say yes.
Very good. Next, for the second group of credit card invoices in the amount of $1,909.80 from Chemical Bank. Is there a motion to approve those?
I got that. I move that the Board of Education approve the district credit card invoices in the amount of $1,909.80.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tony Duncan.
Yes.
Eric Smith. Yes. David Jaffe.
Yes.
Jan Collison.
Yes.
Janine Coughlin.
Yes.
Marianne Bird.
Yes.
Mike Colucci.
Yes.
This is tricky because my Brady Bunch squares keep moving around. So
Anybody not been polled?
Oh, did I forget me again?
No, you got it. You were second.
Oh, I thought so.
Okay.
I think that's everybody.
All right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Martin for the superintendent's report.
So before we jump into some action items, I had a couple of updates to give you that I thought you may find of interest. First of all is our food distribution program. It's been going amazingly successful. I really appreciate the work that Wendy Hoare and our food service team has put into that. To date, not including this morning, our total meals served by Saginaw Township for our Saginaw Township kids, 94,148. So over 94,000 plus whatever we do today. We're approaching that 100,000 meal mark. So that's pretty phenomenal. And I'm so pleased with our team and the work that they're doing. When you break that down per session, it comes out to 5,230 meals. So we're serving Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we're serving a little over 5,000 meals each time. Plus, if you recall, we are also We're also providing all the meals for Swan Valley. So those all get put together in our facility and then driven over to their unit. And they're pumping out a surprising amount of meals as far as I'm concerned. Mark Abent has been managing all the volunteers at Heritage, and Janine has been managing all the volunteers, White Pine, and I appreciate both of them and the work that they've been doing in this. Second of all, one of the issues that we're currently trying to tackle as an administrative council is parent pickup of the students' items that were left in school when we closed. Fortunately, we got word late on a Thursday night, and we were able to get word out soon after Thursday night. So that Friday, our last day of school, many of our kids were able to take an awful lot of things home. But we do know that there are kids that still have things in lockers and desks, things like that. Now that we've gotten through, hopefully, the worst of it, we're putting a plan together to get our parents back up to the buildings to pick up their kids' items. The executive order is very specific that students are not allowed in our buildings. So we need to be able to manage all this and figure out what belongs to the kid, what belongs to the school and all that without the student involved picking that up. So it's provided a few challenges. We're going to, we've got some ideas of some things that have worked well in other districts and things that have not worked well. Third thing, we've gotten, as you asked a couple minutes ago, we've received very positive feedback from both the staff and our parents to our first week of the continuation of learning plan. Obviously, that took a tremendous amount of work to put that together. And I was just telling Jamie today how much I appreciated the board members weighing in a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, took a look at the plan and gave me some really good feedback and things that I was able to massage into that plan and make that work. So I appreciate the input you gave me. There were a couple of questions about specifics related to the plan, Jamie. She's prepared to say a few words. Mike Colucci asked about, the amount of Chromebooks versus paper packets. How did that ratio turn out? And about our social emotional part of that. So Jamie's been working on a couple of things and wanted to give you a quick update on that.
So for our social emotional, the executive order was very specific that we really had to take into consideration the level of stress that such an unusual learning environment would cause for everybody involved, parents, students, guardians, teachers, everybody that is going through this pandemic in different ways. Especially as things have rolled out and things have happened in the economy with jobs and pay and all of those things add to the stress that's happening in homes. And then we've added learning in the home as well. So today I had one of our first meetings with our social workers and our counselors. And, we're just continuing to work on sharing ideas and having it be consistent across the district to make sure that all of our families are supported in whatever their needs might be. So we kind of have this proactive approach, and then we also have the reactive. If a student is in some type of social emotional crisis, that we are ready with resources and community services that are available in Saginaw Township. So one of the things that is proactive is at elementary, middle school, and high school, just about everybody is doing some sort of video recording that is dealing with emotions that students might be having right now, stress and anxiety, how to deal with those things. It's all developmentally appropriate for the grade level that they're working with. They also have resources readily available on links. Some of them have created their own Google Classrooms, and then they've shared their links to those resources with the teachers to put on the platform that they're using, whether it be Seesaw at the earlier grades or Google Classroom at the 3rd through 12th grade level. Everybody is participating in wellness calls for support of struggling students or community resources for families. We also have social emotional options on the web page that are being updated on a regular basis. Special education and 504 support is still happening, and those teachers are reaching out to those students specifically. We also have things like shared resources for teachers, parents, and students that's specific to those different demographics. One of them is what do I do in a mental health crisis, and that would include suspected abuse or neglect on a teacher's part, or if it even goes down to what happens if I have a friend who's struggling. And so we're working on getting that out to students right now. Foster care and homeless is also, we're making sure that we're not letting those children slip through the cracks as much as we possibly can. There's a lot of transition and movement in that demographic, but we're really doing a lot to try to make sure that we're keeping track of our homeless and our foster care students. Just again, having a lot of meetings. Today was one of our first ones where we came together as a district. Every building has had meetings for social emotional learning. Then today we came together as a district with the social workers, general ed, special ed, and then the counselors as well. Again, we're going to try to work towards as much consistency across the district as possible. So I think that everybody is just doing a phenomenal job of everything we possibly can to support our families, especially when it comes to mental health and any possible mental health crisis that might come along.
Great. It sounds like a really thorough effort.
Yeah.
James, one of the things that it might be a little bit different, but I've got 90 students, and we've been communicating mostly via email. And one of the things that I've tried to do is, have them think, oh no, not another email. So I've been sending. They probably hear from me 4 times a week, and probably 2 of those are just thinking of you and missing our class, and different quotes, different things that they could look up on YouTube that would make them at least smile or think of something that's just not schoolwork and the predicament that we're in. Because I think if you listen to the news too much, there's so much gloom and doom. And that might be a positive thing that perhaps, I don't even know if the board or Bruce from your end, just a message that's not full of news, but just 1 sentence, 2 sentence. I had a PS, I saw a robin today, and I mean, I can't tell you the feedback I've gotten from the kids, because it's simple stuff, but it doesn't take a whole lot to send a message out to a whole class of kids at one time.
Yeah, we're trying to keep in mind the way kids get information right now. So we're putting it on the learning platform. We're sending out emails. We're also using a lot of social media, and things like that have really gone out with social media a lot. Twitter and Facebook pages. Our high school created a Facebook page specifically to get information out to some high schools, students and parents. Facebook's more along the lines of parents, but we're trying to get things out on Twitter as well. So yeah, I agree. Those type of non-academic messages kids are just craving a regular conversation sometimes, especially when things are stressful at home.
Jamie, I have a question. I had a teacher send me an email last Friday asking if she could go through the drive-through at White Pine to pick up lunches for a student that can't get out. Are the teachers, and of course, yes, I just sent a little note to Wendy because obviously she didn't have a kid in the car, or however we want to make sure she had the verbiage right. But is that something that the teachers know that they can do? Just another way maybe to have a touch point with those struggling students? I don't know, it's just a thought.
That's a really good point. I can add that to my next staff update. Okay. I know there are a lot of teachers doing personal things. I know one of our 3rd grade teachers at Arrowwood did a drive around to all of her classroom kids with a book, a children's book, put it at the end of the driveway with a little snack and a homemade bookmark that she made. And so there are a lot of those kinds of things going on. I haven't heard much about the food kinds of things, like you're discussing, but that's certainly something I can add to the notes that to make sure that they know that that's available if they have somebody in mind.
Good, perfect, thank you.
Good point. Jamie, what'd the breakdown end up between Chromebooks and paper packets then?
Between Chromebooks, we figured out about, we had planned for 500 packets to be picked up at Heritage, the first packet pickup day. And then we figured about 800 were requested at White Pine. We didn't have as many people pick up packets as what they originally requested. So we figure about somewhere around 25% of our students are requesting paper packets, and the rest are able to do it through their technology, including some families that have asked, could we get a Chromebook? And anybody that has requested one, we've made sure we got one too.
The state
So with
counts
the-
that came in from the ISD surveys of districts, and then we've surveyed our parents. The statewide totals came in around 70% and 72% when it came to those with devices and those with internet access. So for us to be 75-25 is a pretty loose estimate. You know, it wasn't scientific by any means, but it falls kind of in line with where the state averages ended up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea how many of our students are simply not engaged in any way?
With the first week of learning, what it's in our plan is that by Thursday, if a student hasn't engaged by Thursday, then we check on them through some type of contact. So like for example, in the high school, if a student isn't engaged in their first hour, then the teacher calls the students on their roster on their first hour that hasn't been engaged. If there's a student that hasn't been engaged and there's a concern, then they might be referred to the social worker or counselor. So by Thursday, if a student hasn't been engaged, then we try to contact them usually by phone. And so we haven't gotten an exact number yet. We haven't really looked at that from the first week, especially because it was so new and we had some people thinking they wanted a packet and then they didn't show up to get one and all of those kind of things. So we let everybody kind of the dust settle a little bit before we have an exact number of how many are not engaged. But from an internal standpoint, from what we're hearing from teachers, even at the high school level where we were wondering how teenagers might engage, teachers are pleasantly surprised at how many of their students are engaging in this.
All right, thanks, Jamie. A couple of final announcements from me. You probably saw the senior communication that went out this morning with some updates on prom, senior honors night, and commencement. We've been getting an awful lot of phone calls, both to my office and to the high school office, about if there are any more updates on that. And obviously, those things are still up in the air with the governor's orders, and we have no idea what this summer is going to look like. So if you didn't read that, take a look at that. That went out to Heritage parents this morning. School of choice window, we had cabinet meeting this morning. We're thinking we probably will need to shift our May school of choice window for two reasons. First of all, we don't have people in the buildings for parents to pick up the packets to apply for school of choice. And there's a significant part in there where they go and have the school of choice packets signed by their current school administration relative to the discipline that they've had in their current district. Obviously, nobody's in those districts either. So we're thinking if we shift that back, we're looking at like a May 19th to June 2nd window and having a singular pickup point for the packets in our district through the community ed office. And then thinking of having parents sign an affidavit, basically, stating that their child has not had suspensions and expulsions, and knowing that, and it'll be obviously stated right on there, if when things open back up and we start getting CA-60s from other districts, if we find that there are significant disciplinary issues, and basically the parent wasn't truthful with us on the affidavit, that we reserve the right to send the student back to their home district. So based on all the turmoil going on and things, we think that's probably our best bet. We know there are parents that are wanting to apply for school of choice because they're calling. And so we're thinking we want to implement a system. It just may look like it gets pushed back by 2 weeks for that window. Then we would still have the regular window in early August. in that very short window, the first week of school. So we think we can accomplish everything we need to accomplish, but with the stay-at-home order being extended, if we bump it, that window just past that to the 19th and open that up, hopefully we'll be in a better spot by then. Hard to tell. Obviously, you're probably starting to hear about huge concerns about next year's budget. The two big keys that are really sinking this particular ship are the lack of sales tax revenue that's being created in the state. Obviously, people aren't out spending money, and then the lack of income tax revenue because people are being laid off, their jobs are being furloughed, pay's being cut. Those are the two bigger things that feed into the school aid fund. We've been warned in our last couple of meetings to look at anything possibly from a minus 250 per student cut to take care of the entire deficit that they're anticipating, a minus 1,000 a student cut. So we're going back to the 07, 08, 09 years during the recession when we were making significant cuts. One of the wild cards in the midst of all this is the Federal CARES Act funding that is being released from the federal level to the state. We have no idea what the flow through is going to be for Saginaw Township, if that will help offset some of that. But I'm being warned, and all of my state associations, and Mike Waldy is too, that we're looking at unprecedented financial distress next year. So you start looking at things like school of choice. You start looking at possible reductions in some areas that would keep it as far away from the teacher and the students in the classroom as possible. So I've planted that seed with our principals team, with our administrative council. Our cabinet is already starting to put some thoughts together on if this turns out as drastic as they're predicting. We need to be ready to move quickly, because back in 07, 08, 09, we had 6 months to prepare. We may possibly have, 35, 40 days to prepare for this to still get our budget submitted by June 30th to the state. I was on a conference call today at lunch with the Michigan, several of the legislators, and they are saying that May 18th is the consensus revenue estimating conference where the state looks at how much money do we think we have to work with. So that's going to be a critical date. After that revenue conference, the state will start finishing up the fiscal year 20 budget that we're in right now. And there are questions about whether there might even be a proration in that for this current year. We've seen recommendations along the lines of a 10% reduction in the May state aid payment and a 10% reduction in the June state aid payment. So those would be considerable, given that we've already spent much of our budget, and we would be looking at a last minute shift in that. And then after, if you remember, the April 15th income tax deadline got moved to July 15th. So the state basically is going to look at what the revenue conference has to say. And then they said, as far as next year's budget, they really kind of need to wait till mid-August to find out what those income tax revenues turn out to be before they're ready to release any kind of a budget for us. Well, obviously, by middle of August, we're already 6 weeks into our new fiscal year with a budget that we've done our very best to put together with very little information. So I've been trying to counsel Mike Waldy through therapy sessions so that he doesn't get in his car and drive back to his previous district. He's been through he's climbed a number of mountains since he's been here in a very short time, and now we've got one that might be even bigger. So I told him that we're already in the mindset, we're going to make this work. We're going to keep it far away from kids and teachers in the classroom. And I'm expecting to get the administrative council together probably mid-May to do some budget reduction workshops. Obviously, the board's going to be a significant part of that conversation. We need to plan a best case scenario budget and a worst case scenario budget and do it in a pretty short amount of time. So I just want to make sure the board was aware that we're hearing that consistently from from MASB and MASA and the school business officials and from the legislature. So didn't want anybody to be surprised in the next month when we start having those conversations. Okay.
Bruce, quick question for you. Is there
Yes.
any conversation about whether or not any relief from the federal government to the states as part of a second or third tier of legislative relief might be forthcoming?
They have not talked about a second or third. It's all the conversation has been around whether this first shot will help us at all. Might that help offset the 10% reduction in May and June? But none of the groups have even mentioned the second or third wave. So that's a really good point that we'll have to keep an eye open for.
Well, I certainly hope if the Los Angeles Lakers can get 10 million, they can give some money to the schools.
Yeah, right. Let's hope so. Finally, on that note, I couldn't leave you on bad news. Wanted to leave you on good news. Heritage High School has been named the U.S. News and World Report Best High School in America. So we're pretty excited about that. They finished 4th in the Saginaw region and finished in the top tier of high schools in the United States. And so there will be some press releases and a large banner I'd like to hang on the front of the high school. And as you can probably imagine, we're going to publicize the heck out of that. So congratulations to the high school. That's a pretty significant group that goes through all those rankings. Quite a bit of that is based on our advanced placement program. The U.S. News and World Report puts an awful lot of emphasis on the AP, and that, of course, is something we really do well in. So I wanted to leave you with that bit of good news at the end of my report.
That's wonderful.
Good news.
Bruce, I did have a couple of questions. First, on that report, if there's any kind of link or anything, I'd like to put something on my Facebook page about that. I've got a lot of friends on Facebook, I guess, that have kids and whatnot in the township, and some that don't and maybe considering it. I think that'd be a great thing. So, but I want to send out something that's, got some meat to it, not just Eric says.
Sure.
Relative to the budget, yes. First, if it'll help, I'll offer my board pay to help offset whatever losses we may have. So that's, I want to put that out there. But on a serious note, is there any carryover from any potential savings from not operating the rest of this year that we might apply to next year?
Yes, we're hoping that those kinds of things help us out significantly. When you think of things like, bus fuel, we haven't been using any bus fuel at all. That's going to come in way under budget. We immediately, when we locked down on March 11th, we put the buildings into vacation mode as far as heating and cooling is concerned. So there'll be some energy savings. There are a lot of those kinds of things that I think will help us. That's part of what Mike and I and the administrative team are trying to get our arms wrapped around so that we can finish up this year's budget and hopefully come in a pretty good spot, which will help offset the cuts for next year. But yes, we should be seeing some savings there. The one piece that we won't see savings in is our commitment to pay our staff during this entire closure. That came up pretty significantly in our meeting with the legislators today, because the state, when this budget concern was announced, the state immediately furloughed a number of their workers in order to cut costs. And yeah, we, as part of the executive order, that's not an option for us. So, when 85% of your budget is in people, because we're in the people business, then that large piece, we probably won't see any reduction.
Okay, cool. That's as to be expected, and I completely support that. Switching subjects to a couple other things you talked about, the school lunches. You mentioned in the last meeting, I believe, that there was some concern over contact and risk of the workers, and that had to be weighed with continuing to do the program. Is that something that we're continuing to weigh? Some of my contacts in other districts have told me that they've actually stopped doing it and went to bridge cards or something along those lines.
So that's a good point. It was announced, I believe, a week ago that they were going to be releasing bridge cards to any of our students who qualified for free reduced lunch. So those bridge cards should be coming. We have been basically told we don't have an option but to continue. So we are continuing our food service program. She had a bit of a drop off in food service workers that were willing to come in and work out of concerns for their own personal health or the health of a family member. That seems to have, erosion seems to have stopped for the most part. So at this point, we have enough people to continue. I know Janine's been working with the volunteers, and we haven't seen much of a drop off in volunteers as far as I'm concerned. So people are still willing. We're practicing social distancing. We have the masks, the gloves, all those kinds of things. So we did, as you noticed, change our distribution schedule a little bit so that we had our workers coming in 3 days a week instead of 6 days a week. Again, just to cut down on the exposure. Wendy Howard is cycling her workers through on a rotation basis rather than having them working each session. So we've done some things to try to mitigate some of those concerns, and it seems to be working.
I have just
Well, I have to say, oh, go ahead, Marion.
okay, just a couple thoughts. Number one, what are we doing with graduation then as far as Mackinac? I mean, will that be part of an overall plan to be doing something for them as well? And then the other thing is having to, I've been watching pretty much most of the Governor Cuomo press conferences during the day. And one of the things that came up really early on was the loss of funding from the state, exactly what people were talking about, and that the hope that that somebody else had mentioned that there would be federal funds that would come to help supplement, make up that gap, because they're talking obviously several millions and millions of dollars there. So I'm thinking that that is something from a legislative perspective at the federal level that they're going to be looking for.
Correct. Yeah, we're waiting for some more information. The state has their dollar figures on what the state's going to get from the Federal CARES Act. We just don't know how much of that we're going to see in Saginaw Township. It's going to be based upon the Title I allocation. So the districts that obviously are more needy are going to get more CARES Act money, and those who don't necessarily need it won't see much at all. So we were superintendents and board members on the MASB webinar today with the legislatures. We're pretty frustrated that yet again we don't have any answers on how much. Are we looking at $1,000 or $100,000? That'll help us significantly with planning, and we're just not getting any answers yet. In regard to your first question about Mackinac, yes, Mackinac is being treated the same. I've been working with Alan, and he's been communicating that to his parents and his kids, that their session is being postponed. They're the first part of June, and that they'll be part of whether we can reschedule it and hold it later, whether we do something virtually. All those options are currently on the table.
And are we keeping contact with our local government? Because there's a little bit of, I read the newspaper today that they're interviewing for township manager. And Mitch Reno just passed away. Those were two strong voices in Saginaw Township. So I'm just wondering, in terms of funding coming in for Saginaw Township on its own, and maybe there's a way to be part of.
Sure. Yeah, I know they were interviewing for a new township manager, and I'm hearing rumblings we might be looking for a police chief before too long. I don't know if he's got another year or two or what he has, but so there'll be some turnover at the township office. I stay in pretty close contact with them. I believe they're waiting to hear what their funding might look like from the feds too, just like we are. But I'll certainly keep them in mind and see what we can do together.
Okay, thank you.
Jan, you had a question?
Well, I just wanted to tell Jamie, my daughter with the 4 of her children is taking advantage of the paper packets. And so last Monday and today, she went to get them for 3 of them. One is doing everything online, but the paper packets have worked out great. As a matter of fact, I had the kids today. I finally told them that they could come to my house for the first time forever. And we sat down and worked on paper packets. So they're doing really well. And I was very impressed with them. And then as far as food goes, Katie, my daughter, says to me, Mom, we picked up the paper packets and the kids said, well, let's go through the food line. Kate says, I felt so bad. I said, you can go through the food line. So Janine, my daughter was so impressed with what those kids got in those bags. She says, oh, Mom, you have to tell them at the meeting tonight. I cannot believe what they got in those bags.
Oh,
So I just wanted you to know.
Thank you. God bless Wendy. You know, we had grilled cheese 2 weeks ago, and Sunday night was printing off the directions to the grilled cheese and put the
Yes, they had directions for their little hamburgers today.
Yes. They're doing a great job. They really are.
Yeah, they're doing a wonderful job.
Yes, full new appreciation. Yes.
The food program and the effort and the execution should be an incredible source of pride for the district throughout this.
Oh,
and we should be proud of that. And we should be proud of Heritage's recognition. For different reasons, the district is getting recognition. And the community should be incredibly proud of all the people, all the employees of the district, the administrators who are bending over backwards during difficult conditions to try to make the lemonade out of lemons. So huge thank you to everyone involved.
Absolutely.
And I'm sitting here with ants in my pants because I have 2 significant announcements to make that are currently embargoed, and I'm not allowed to make them yet. And once you hear them, you'll be even prouder. So please know there's more great news coming. I wish I could leak it to you, but I'm not allowed to. So stay tuned.
That's a teaser. That's a teaser. I want to know now.
And it's trying to bring the crowd back for the next monthly meeting.
Right. I wasn't going to come, but now.
And
I'm sorry. Hey, Bruce. One thing, I guess in the back of I just wrote it down. In the back of your mind, I know there's a ton of things going on right now, but maybe in the back of your mind, we can maybe start developing a list or start getting some idea of some kind of recognition we can get for all these folks that are going above and beyond in this difficult time. You and Jamie know much more than any of us, what that list would entail, but just something to think about as we move forward, because, at some point we'll come out of this, and at some point the kids will be back in school. And, when those kinds of things kind of calm down, I think it'd be great to show some kind of appreciation for just how far above and beyond so many people have gone to really make us proud of this district, as David had said. Just something to think about. And I did have one last question. Bruce, sure. I think I emailed you. I can't remember if I emailed David, maybe too. I had about 4 or 5 parents contact me about grades and whatnot as part of this learning plan. Have you guys been hearing that also? And what's the response been? What's the company response that we should give?
Were you able to see? I believe I sent out an email to the board members probably 2 weeks ago with kind of the breakdown of our thought process and the input we had from Michigan Department of Ed. We heard that pretty strongly in the beginning, and that was Mike Newman echoed that he was getting emails and questions too. I know Jamie and I spent quite a bit of time answering individual questions. Since then, it seems to have calmed down. I haven't heard anything since, so I don't know if they're really upset with my response and planning their next move, or if it turned into an agree to disagree. At least they know there was thinking behind it, and they don't agree with it, but they're letting it go.
Yeah.
It's hard telling.
And the 5 I've heard from, I think 4 of them were actually after that communication went out. That's kind of why I asked. I saw what the communication was, and then I got about 4 more calls after that. But I haven't had much since that initial, barrage of calls after the communication went out. So I think, and that was the general attitude, is just kind of agree to disagree, disappointment, but understanding of the situation. So I just didn't know, what you guys had heard after the communication thing.
Well, and it wasn't very clear, Eric. When I read it, it wasn't very clear. If
Right.
There was
right. The first one, I think you sent out another one that kind of clarified things, at least to the board you did. But yeah, for the initially, when you read the communication, I don't think it specifically says that students cannot get a grade. Kind of leaves a gray area, and there's a lot that's left up to the student and whatnot. So, but I was just curious.
Yeah, that's been something I've been hearing around the county. We all are on a credit, no credit basis with our high schools. I heard from one parent that Cranbrook down in, where's that, Birmingham, was doing letter grades. I'm not sure how they figured out how to do that, but they're in a different kind of with, they're able to handle that equity piece a little bit differently than we can. But in talking on our state superintendent listservs and others, that's all we're seeing is credit, no credit. The two gals from Governor Whitmer's office a couple of weeks ago, she sits on the National Commission of Universities and Colleges, and said that they had just met, and basically the universities and colleges have agreed that the spring of 2020 is going to be a non-factor when they're looking at admissions, scholarships, all those kinds of things. My daughter's in college, and they're hearing the same thing from their university, that this whole semester is just going to be a wash. They're going to basically consider the other 7 semesters, or basically 6 semesters, because they don't look at the spring of your senior year. Instead of making those decisions on 7, they'll make them on 6, because there's just no way to even be able to judge an A against a B, against a credit, against a pass. It's just fallen victim to the circumstance. So most of the folks that have been upset that I'm hearing from, it's about that college piece that they've been worried about.
Yeah, there's a couple that have mentioned the competition for valedictorian and all that kind of thing, but most are concerned about the college piece. Yeah.
Sure, I understand that.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Yep.
When you're talking about recognition of people, just an idea, the people that are putting the packets together, the Sandy Redfields of the world at Heritage, that kind of thing, that's a big task. So that's kind of a side note. And then secondly, I've been working a little bit with Misty and Anne Marie Ray on an alternative for prom. And so I did let Bruce know this. We have a Zoom meeting on Wednesday, just to see if there's something else that we can do if it's lifted on May 15th, even if it's small groups. Is there an alternative to help make memories for our juniors and seniors? So that's in the works. We're seeing a lot of the smaller districts do signs in their communities, with their seniors. Freeland's has a GoFundMe page to do that. Caseville's done it, some other smaller districts. Obviously, we're too big to do that. But if anybody has seen a good idea, or anything, please pass it along of maybe, what other districts are doing for their seniors. So just about that.
We are actually working on, we met with the high school administrative team also, and we were talking about also, how do we do this? How do we recognize the 300 and something kids that are graduating this year? So I think that a lot of people are working on that, and we know we want to do something to recognize those kids and make them feel special for the accomplishments that they've had, and the fact that they are going to miss this huge milestone in their life if we're not able to have commencements. So so a lot of thinking is going into this too.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Eric, kind of going back to your pass fail. They've been given the option at one of the schools where I teach, pass no credit. But that's a whole different ballgame, because then you're looking at more than $1,000 that they paid for a class, and over the past 5 weeks that we've been off online, some students have done absolutely nothing, and but the majority of those also didn't really do anything in the prior 10 weeks. But they're going to be given that option of no credit, but that's going to easily be $1,000, and then tack on at least another $500 for the books. So it's a pretty substantial. Do they take a D, for which they would have to take the class again, or do they take the no credit? So it's
wow. Yeah, there's definitely financial impact, but I can tell you, I know a couple of families who had kids that go to Cranbrook. That's much cheaper than Cranbrook.
yeah.
Well, Eric, to address the concern of some parents about the college admissions issue, at least it's my understanding that the decision that was made by the administration on grading is that there will be grades posted to the transcript for third marking period that are what the grades were as of the date of closure. And while for the semester, it's credit, no credit, and there will be no impact on GPA, colleges will get an idea of whether the students were succeeding and to what extent during the semester. And, while it's not part of the calculation, they're going to see whether there was consistency during the time period, even though it doesn't.
Right. Yep. Understood. And I think in the communication that was sent out, Doug did a good job of summarizing that part. And the people I've talked to, I've told them exactly that. They will get a letter grade for the third quarter or quarter marking period, but just not for that second semester. So. Yep. Good
And
point.
not that anybody would need to be reminded of this time in U.S. history, really, and world history, but their transcript will be coded also with COVID-19 right on their transcript for this part.
Wow.
Not that colleges will need to be reminded that that's why they have credit, no credit,
Right.
but it will have right on their transcript. COVID-19 will be right on there.
Wow.
Jamie, this is
Yep.
an odd question. Do you have any idea, AP testing,
Mm-hmm.
if, I probably won't say this very eloquently, but if colleges and universities will lower their standards to accept that credit? Basically. That makes sense?
I haven't heard a lot about that, but I know that College Board is creating a test that I have not seen it yet. I'm interested to see how they're going to do this, but they are creating a test that they can take online at home, and this is how much everybody is making these accommodations for this time, not just us, but everyone. College Board is changing their AP tests from approximately 3 hours to about a 45-minute test that they can do online at home. So it's impacting everything in all grades, all courses, all exams, assessments, everything. So.
And Janine, I don't know where I heard it, whether it was a conversation with Bruce or someone else, but it was my understanding that the College Board was, in grading those 45-minute exams, was loosening their standards as well, in recognition of the fact that there wasn't a full year of learning.
Right.
Exactly.
That's okay.
And they're only testing the students on material through mid-March. They're not going to test them on what they would normally get in April and May, because they know that's been turned upside down. So, yeah, the IB exams were completely erased and everybody got a passing score, but the AP modified their test to a 45-minute online test with, as David said, very generous grading.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions for Bruce or Jamie before we move into some of the agenda items?
Maybe Eric, he's on mute. I see his mouth moving.
Yeah, I was just giving some instruction to one of the kids. They were walking by.
Sorry. Okay.
Homeschooling.
Yep.
Okay, Bruce, you want me to move through the other items, or do you want to take the lead?
Either way.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me flip over to that screen. We have an expulsion that we have not heard from parents after numerous attempts, and so we're just going to move forward without an appeal and bring that to you for action.
Okay, is there a motion for the expulsion of student A?
I move that due to a level, oh gosh, Roman numeral, great. 4?
Correct.
Thank you. Violation of the White Pine Middle School Student Code of Conduct for assault student to student. The Board of Education expels student A. Support.
Any discussion?
I really knew it was 4.
You know.
She was asking my kids, hey,
Eric, roll call, please.
David Jaffe,
Yes?
Janine Coughlin,
yes.
Jan Collison,
Yes.
Mike Palucci. You're on mute,
You're
Mike.
muted, Mike.
Yes.
Mary Ann Bird,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
Eric Smith, yes.
All right, thank you. Next item, we have an approval of a policy waiver resolution. I will let you do a motion in a second, and then at discussion, I'll explain what this means.
Anyone want to make a motion?
I will. I move that the Board of Education approve the attached policy waiver resolution.
Is there a second?
Support.
Second.
Go ahead, Bruce.
All right, this came from Troon Law Firm after the last extension from Governor Whitmer, which would be the second extension, not the one from a couple days ago. And this is a resolution for all districts in Michigan, basically stating there are all kinds of small details in our huge board policy packet that may be in conflict with the governor's executive order. And rather than going through with a fine-tooth comb and finding all 75 of those, this is kind of a blanket resolution that says if there are any spots in our current board policy that are in conflict with the governor's executive order, they will be null and void until the governor's executive order expires. So, for instance, I was going through the other day looking for something else, and we have a policy that says all students will participate in the annual M-STEP, SAT, and PSAT testing. That's right in one of our policies. So obviously there is no M-STEP, PSAT, SAT testing this year. So that would be a place where the governor's executive order would override our policy. So this is a blanket resolution that just kind of catches all those things and says if something comes up, the executive order outweighs that. I got in and doctored that a little bit so that it didn't give, didn't give unending authority to the superintendent to play with policy, just to say through June 11th, which is our last day of formal instruction. And then after that, the board can either rescind that resolution or extend it if it needs to, based on what the circumstances are at the time. So that's what that resolution is all about. It came straight from Troon.
Any questions for Bruce on the resolution or discussion?
Nope.
Okay, roll call, please.
Eric Smith, yes. Tony Duncan,
Yes.
Mary Ann Bird,
Yes.
Mike Palucci,
Yes.
Jan Collison,
Yes.
Janine Coughlin,
Yes.
David Jaffe.
Yes.
All right. Next item is the first reading of policy 7630. These are graduation requirements. It was recommended by the Michigan Department of Ed that we revisit our graduation requirement policy to make sure that seniors had all possible leverage and benefit in light of the situation to pass. And so after you move in second, I'll give you a couple of details on that.
I'll take this one. It is our recommendation that the attached policy revisions be adopted.
Second.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Okay, you'll notice in your packet, if you roll down to the very end, there is a section in red that says, it speaks to the Michigan Merit Curriculum. Strict compliance has been waived for our graduating seniors. Additionally, you may be aware that all of our graduating students must have half a credit in civics. And because of the COVID-19 shutdown, that has been waived. And then another piece that we're required to make known in our policy is that if there were students that were failing a course at the time of school closure, they have to be given an opportunity to demonstrate learning in that course through the district's determination of what that might be to give them credit for the course. And so I took that right from the Department of Ed. They wanted to make sure that our policy reflected that. And so I'm asking for a revision on that, a temporary revision. And then after this situation is over, then that would go resume back to its normal wording.
So then what are we doing for the kids who may have been failing the course? Have we identified them and given them other materials to work on?
Yes, Mike Newman, Brian Blaine, and the counselors at the high school have done an audit of all of our seniors to see where they were as of closure. Teachers are contacting those students who had a failing grade at that point and might be in danger of not graduating. And then we're looking at a number of different things. From a portfolio, the student can present a portfolio of different works that may show that they deserve to pass the class. Some teachers are coming up with a test, kind of a summary of where we were as of closure, and see if the student can get a passing grade on that. Their projects have been put together as an opportunity for students to do a project to demonstrate their learning. So there are a couple of different ways that we're giving those kids an opportunity to prove that they deserve to pass so that they can graduate. And if there's a point at which it's questionable, they're on the bubble, the state has told us by all means to give them the benefit of the doubt and make sure they graduate. So I don't have feedback yet from Mike and Brian because we're just starting our second week. Feedback yet on what that percentage might be and how many of those kids will take advantage of that.
Okay.
Bruce, why is civics highlighted specifically?
It's just one of the state graduation requirements that all the kids have to have. And they were worried because some of our students take that in 11th and some take it in 12th grade. They were worried that some kids might have postponed that until the spring of their senior year and all of a sudden get caught short. So they've asked us to make sure we highlight that specifically. Yes, I think what you're intending is there are a number of different graduation requirements, but that was the one in particular, mainly because most seniors follow a traditional stepping stone of courses, but that civics one tends to get bumped around depending on their schedule. So
sophomores and juniors who might be enrolled in civics this semester, they're not going to have to retake the course. They would also get credit, correct?
Correct. This is just for a senior who might be short because they waited until this last semester to take it, and now they might get caught without a passing grade in that class. So we're supposed to give it to them. Yep.
Now,
Jamie,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jamie, how many recovery teachers do we have? That's probably the wrong terminology, but like Martha Kim, Artuzo, that kind of thing, that are helping these kids, to get credit recovery or class recovery?
Well,
go ahead, Bruce.
No, at this point, for these seniors trying to get to graduation, basically all of our teachers at the high school are recovery teachers.
Yes.
They're all taking on that role to get them through to graduate. As far as our traditional summer recovery, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have two that work specifically in the credit recovery program through the summer for kids that are wanting to catch up, and some want to work ahead and some are trying to make up for credit they lost.
Are we going to do summer recovery at all for anything, or is it just going to be a carte blanche?
Well, we're really working on that right now, but I don't see how we would how it would stop us from being able to do that, because we use Edgenuity, which is what Mackinac uses as their online curriculum. So a lot of our credit recovery is done online anyways. We were just talking today about what if they have to come in, if things are if some of the restrictions are lifted again, then we could spread them out as long as they have a Chromebook between, the computer lab, the cafeteria, the student center, things like that, so that we can continue on with credit recovery. I would hate to not be able to allow a student to make up some credits and stop them from graduating. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure credit recovery happens again this summer. And because it is so dependent on an online program, it really shouldn't be too hard to figure out. So the plan is to continue with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Bruce, this is a first reading. Normally a first reading would occur at a committee of the whole meeting and we would adopt or vote on it at the regular meeting that follows. Are you looking for us to vote on the motion and second now?
No, I'm looking at we'll do a second reading and a vote at our May 11th or 18th, depending on what we do with that. Probably the May 18th. That'll still give us plenty of time for those kids to graduate. So.
Okay, so there's no reason to vote on the motion that's been made or seconded.
If well, just to approve it as a first reading, yeah, I guess. So however you want to handle that.
Okay.
It's on record that we've done a first reading, so we should be fine to go to May for the second reading and a vote.
Okay, very good. Then we'll move forward. You got a couple of other things on your agenda.
Yeah, good clarification. Go back to the top of the agenda here. We have Teacher Appreciation Week, May 4th through the 8th. Wanted to get that on your calendars, and right in the middle of that is National School Nurse Day. Carol Mackey, we're going to be celebrating her on May 6th. I'm hearing an awful lot of conversation with MASA, the Superintendent Association, and also MASB with school boards, stating, boy, if you've ever done anything for teacher appreciation, now's the year to take it over the top based on what they've had to do on a very short period of time and completely change the way they're instructing and connecting with kids. So I wanted to put that out there. I'm certainly open for ideas and suggestions. Obviously, this year is going to be trickier than ever. It's not the kind of thing where I can deliver dozens of donuts to all the teachers' lounges throughout the district, and because nobody's around. So ways we can do that are probably, revolve around social media and press release and those kinds of things. But I'm certainly open for suggestions if you have some creative things we can do when everybody's working from home. But just wanted to put that out there. They've just done a phenomenal job with not only helping us develop the plan, but implementing the plan, and for the first week to go so smoothly without any major issues is a real testament to the work they've done and how seriously they've taken this. So we're very pleased. And that's all I have. Okay.
Any questions for Bruce? Well, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is adoption of board negotiating agents. Is there a motion there?
I'll go ahead and take it. I move that the Board of Education appoint the negotiation teams and chief negotiator as listed in attachment A. The chief negotiator, with the assistance of the bargaining team, is fully empowered to reach tentative agreement with each respective employee group and the parameters established by the Board of Education. Such tentative agreements must be ratified by the Board of Education to become part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, is there a second?
Support.
Discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mike Colucci,
Yes.
Marianne Bird,
Yes.
Jan Collison,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
Janine Kaufman,
Yes, thank you, honey. I'm sending my husband text.
Eric Smith, yes, David Jaffe.
Yes. Okay, we've reached the point of our meeting where we welcome public comments. Usually those who wish to address the board would step to the podium, but I don't see a square on the screen for a podium. So with our need to hold our meetings remotely, we're going to handle public comments through submission of form that can be found on the district website at stcs.org. At the top of the website, there's a link where you can find the form for submitting comments. I've seen a few comments which I will share, and while we do that, we'll take about 3 minutes to give people an opportunity to fill out that form and submit it if they want to. I'll note beforehand that it's not the practice of the board to respond to each comment provided. We appreciate the time taken to share thoughts with us, and we ask the superintendent to follow up as necessary on each comment. So if anyone who's on the live stream wants to submit a comment, they can find the form at the district website. In the meantime, we received several comments both before and during the meeting, none of them substantive in nature. The first comment asked when the Google handout for tonight's meeting would be posted, and I know that both Jim Mitchell and I responded to that via email so that that individual could pull up the stream. And then we got two comments that the audio for the meeting was not working well. That it was, the audio seemed to repeat itself. And it appears that the audio problems were caused by a dual feed during the first half of the meeting. And it looks like Jim was able to fix that for the second half of the meeting. So I would like to thank the members of the community who posted those comments for us. And hopefully the second half of the meeting, if you stuck with us throughout the whole meeting, was easier for you to listen and more tolerable to follow along. And if nothing else, when we have our next board meeting in next month in May, we'll know about the dual feed issue, and that issue will be eliminated for the next meeting. This is a learning process for all of us. This is the first time the board has had to do a virtual meeting, so certainly apologize for any audio technical difficulties. But we're working hard to get it right.
May I make a comment, David?
Sure.
I'd like to note the passing of Mary Ray Stelter, who was a longtime secretary and an absolutely wonderful woman, graceful, classy, and she was at Weiss School for a long, long time. And obviously her husband, Ron Stelter, was our golf coach and taught at Douglas MacArthur High School. But she was a wonderful, wonderful woman and did a lot for our district. And I wanted to make a note on her passing last week.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm just waiting about 30 more seconds to see if we get any comments, and if not, we'll move on. And certainly, if we get any comments after the fact, I will make sure that those are circulated to the board, so that the board will see those comments even if they come in after we've moved on in the agenda. But I don't see any other comments have come in, so we'll move on, and I'll entertain a motion to move into closed session. Go ahead, Janine.
I move that we move into closed sessions for strategy negotiations connected with the collective bargaining agreement.
Your support?
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jan Collison,
Yes.
Mike Colucci,
Yes.
Miriam Bird,
Yes.
Tony Duncan,
Yes.
Janine Coughlin,
Yes.
David Jaffe,
Yes.
Eric Smith, yes.
Okay, for anyone who's watching on the YouTube stream, the board's going to move into closed session now for the purpose of discussing strategy negotiation sessions connected with collective bargaining. And so I'm going to ask Jim Mitchell to please shut down the live stream of the meeting, because this portion of the meeting is not open to the public. We'll just give them about 30 seconds.